Hello everyone, welcome to EDFGC5809. This week we're looking at teacher philosophy and considering why teachers need to articulate their philosophy and what does it actually serve in respect to purpose. This aligns quite closely with your second assessment task, in which you actually will put forward a philosophical statement as you apply for a job, which is one of the assessment tasks that you're doing as part of the second assessment. So to get you started on that journey, the learning intention for today is for you to reflect on your personal beliefs, values, commitments, and identities as professional educators, and for you to identify considerations that you will include when you actually put forward your teaching philosophy. So at the moment you're kind of drafting it in your mind, but you will be writing it out. So what is a teaching philosophy? Well, essentially it answers the basic question: what is teaching and learning to you? This is something that in all likelihood you thought quite a lot about as you enrolled for this degree you're doing, and your thoughts and your beliefs have possibly shifted a bit since then. Odds on the values that you hold are probably quite similar still. A teaching philosophy is a statement or a narrative, if you like, that includes what you conceive teaching and learning to be, and we're going to unpack that. I'm going to actually exemplify it using some of the quality teaching aspects, which is a big thing in New South Wales and in Victoria as well, to kind of articulate the assumptions that it makes on the different roles, because that's something you're including in your teaching philosophy. A teaching philosophy also includes a description of how you teach and a justification as to why you teach in that way. It does work to help you demonstrate that you are reflective as a professional teacher, and that there is a purpose to your teaching, and kind of explain that purpose and the wider picture, if you like. You communicate your goals as a professional teacher as part of this, and what you also articulate what you do in order to make those goals become real. It does convey your values, beliefs and goals to a broader audience, and it is quite audience specific. I'm going to show you some examples as well that probably highlight that. It does provide a set of criteria or standards to judge your teaching quality, not in respect to necessarily what happens in the classroom, but to contextualize where you're coming from, where your beliefs are, and what you're seeking to do, and how effectively you do that, depending on how well you actually articulate your intentions. It does provide a context to relate the evidence. So that's why a teaching philosophy is a component that you have in your portfolio, where you put forward all that evidence, because the evidence is in the context of this is my beliefs, this is what I'm doing, and then you're substantiating it with pieces of work to demonstrate how you actually go about it. So take a moment, in fact take several moments, to think about the end goal or the big picture that you think education actually seeks to do. What do you seek for your students to achieve? Is it for them to master content, become engaged citizens, become fulfilled as individuals, or be able to think critically and problem solve, discover and generate knowledge, work as teams, or being quite self-directed and lifelong learners? These are some of the buzzwords we might see every now and then, but it does, and quite likely a number of these are things that you feel quite strongly about and think, yeah, this is what I really seek to do, this is what I think it all boils down to. So take a moment, and it might not at all be the ones just nominated here from Cornell's grad school. There might be other things that are likely to be popping into your head. So jot down some of your thoughts. What do you actually think is the main purpose of education? And what does that purpose actually require of you as a teacher? What's your role in that bigger picture? And I'm going to continue to unpack this and hopefully generate some thoughts in respect to your philosophy. What do you actually hope to achieve as a teacher? Well, that connects with some of those big picture goals as well. What are your desired outcomes, particularly in relation to your speciality? Or if you're a primary teacher, you might be looking at, okay, as a teacher of middle primary, this is what I would seek to demonstrate in my students. Or as a high school chemistry teacher, this is what I'd look at. What do you hope to achieve by teaching? So what are your aspirations really as a teacher? What relationship do you hope to highlight between your teaching and the wider society and culture where your students live? Now, obviously, you don't know where you're going to be applying for jobs, but you might already have a pretty clear picture that there is a particular type of student cohort that you're hoping to work with or work in with your when you graduate and when you become a teacher. Your beliefs are probably shaped by your own experiences. So think back to what are some of the pivotal moments, if you like, that have shaped your beliefs and values of teaching and learning. There might be, this might relate to teachers that you've come across as a student yourself who've really shaped it, who shaped your thoughts. And perhaps these experiences have impacted on your own approach that you're currently developing as you're developing your teacher identity. In a teaching philosophy, we include some of those values, beliefs, the big picture stuff, but you're also relating it to a theoretical framework that you would position yourself in. And that's one of the reasons why I set the reading from Lyons, Ford and Arthur Kelly, which gives you a whole kind of little buffet, if you like, of theories that are quite common in respect to informing how people go about managing their classrooms. So from your initial thoughts of what you believe teaching and learning to be, you might also connect that, or you will connect it when you articulate your belief in what kind of theory that really speaks to you as a teacher. So you got some examples there: goal-centered theory, choice theory, cognitive behavioral theory. You might look at kind of authentic learning, child-centered theory. In fact, the very background pictures of this slideshow is Montessori, and she's, well, guess who Maria Montessori is in that picture. So it might be something that has shaped you. I'm not actually particularly influenced by Montessori at all, but I just thought I'd chuck her in there, as opposed to all the portraits of Vygotsky and famous men. A bit of variety, I thought. Anyway, so as you relate this to the wider theoretical framework that underpins your beliefs and which serves as a guide really for your teaching, also you might think of a metaphor or an anecdote that's relevant to the type of teaching you're going to be doing that captures the spirit of successful learning experiences. You might be using metaphors like teams and coaches, or if you view students as empty vessels, that you feel those sorts of metaphors actually serve to reflect your beliefs and values, and you might even make that connection quite explicit. You also need to think, apart from the metaphorical aspect of your role, you actually need to come up with some pretty concrete illustrations of what this philosophy makes you do, if you like, in respect to how you set up your environment for learning. What's your role as a teacher? What do you see your role as? And a lot of these things, I mean, it's not a correct answer. It's an exercise in justifying and explaining what you think. And by doing that, the person who reads your philosophical statement gets quite a clear understanding of who you are as a teacher. So if you're applying for a job, the person who's reading your application will get a picture of what you stand for, and if those sorts of values and approaches to learning is a good fit with the school that is seeking a teacher. So you will explain how you set up your environment for learning. Incidentally, that's a really common interview question that you might get asked when you eventually apply for a job. You explain what you think your role is in the learning environment, and what's your student's role, and what kind of resources are you likely to be using in order to make teaching and learning happen in its best way in your classroom? And why do you do it this way? How does it help learning? So you're explaining why, because that fits in to what your beliefs are. So to unpack this a bit more, I'm going to connect with what Ruth Reynolds, in this book, you might have come across, it used to be grey before, if you've got the second edition. Anyway, it's based on the elements of the quality teaching framework, which was developed, it's actually emerged from the 90s and it's been around for quite a long time. And it has also informed the AIDSL standards to quite a significant degree. It is research-based. One of the reasons why I like this is because Ruth Reynolds articulates and highlights the different points of the role as a teacher and the role as a learner, and the assumptions that are kind of framing there, which I think might be helpful as you articulate your philosophy and your values. So if we're looking at deep knowledge, for example, from a teaching perspective, our knowledge is that technologies change to meet the needs of society, and that these changes can cause issues for the environment. We need to develop our knowledge on the different technologies that have changed over time. So we're getting that rich, complex understanding. From a learner's point of view, learners know that things change, and students already use many technologies that are considered, but they might not necessarily realize these as technologies. So to scaffold this, we focus our learners on the big picture of change, explicitly teach research skills, which fits in with the idea of 21st century learners as well. And we allow our students to express their understanding in different ways. So that's our assumption about learners, which informs our teaching behaviour. For deep understanding, that's not really in there, that fits into all aspects, if you like. But if we're looking at problematic knowledge, if we focus on the learners, the assumption is that learners don't always know immediately. This is actually a HSA or society, social studies text. So we're looking at, it does emphasize a lot of the environmental aspects of that textbook, but the idea is anyway the same. So learners don't always recognize the issues at hand, if you like. Students undertake research on various issues to watch a number of, for example, short films to construct knowledge. Thinking hats might be used. So this is a sociocultural approach, largely, that's framed this particular aspect of the quality teaching framework and the idea that we're learning in context. So it's a constructive sociocultural approach. Construction of knowledge, again, articulated, and we're looking at higher order thinking. So you can read, I'm not going to talk to each and every one, but you can look at how that's unpacked. It's just there to highlight some of the aspects that you might particularly hone in on in your philosophy, because you might find that they're really key things that you're emphasizing in your teaching. Quality learning environment, a number of different aspects in there. In respect to significance of the content we teach, again, it hones in on a number of different ones. I should point out, just so I'm not telling you the wrong thing, in the very first one you got the intellectual quality. That's actually the aspect that fits in, which is quite student-centered, and then you move into the quality learning environment and then significance. Okay, I'm going to stop flicking back and forth. With those considerations from the quality teaching aspect framework, it does again relate to a particular theoretical position, which is why you need to articulate what kind of theory actually informs your role as a teacher and how you go about it, and then making the link from the more abstract values, theoretical, to how that manifests in reality. So you might also articulate how your particular teaching philosophy connects with the curriculum and hang it up on specific examples from your own practice, whether it's, you know, teaching maths or teaching an inquiry-based learning sequence as part of geography or something, to hang up how your philosophy then manifests itself in your teaching and what you've done with your students as you've done it. So you come up with some really concrete examples. And again, that is something you're doing as part of your second assignment, because you're going to generate evidence from your placements that you would put forward in respect to selection criteria, but it fits in with the same idea of having specific examples. You also need to consider what's the role of the learner in that example and articulate that. And what did you do as a teacher to scaffold that? What kind of evidence did that learning experience generate that indicated your learner's understanding, your learner's growth, all those aspects? So you're making, from your values and from your beliefs and from your intentions and goals, you're unpacking it into quite practical, concrete details and hanging it up on specific examples. In respect to how you actually might format a teaching philosophy statement, these are some suggestions from UCAT, which is an American university from memory. In general, we use present tense, and often we use first person because this is your statement. Doesn't mean you start every sentence with I, but you do include yourself in there because you're not trying to speak on behalf of anyone else. Often we try to avoid technical terms, keep your audience in mind. Now, your audience for a teaching philosophy statement as you apply for a job is going to be, for example, a principal and various teachers. So they will have some knowledge, but terminology can be quite specific to certain settings. So it's a really good idea to avoid jargon and not assume that the reader would know, because you might actually mean something different as well when you use a term. So it's always a good idea to explain what you mean by something. So most statements avoid those technical terms and talk about used language and concepts that can be more broadly appreciated to a more general teaching audience. Include teaching strategies and methods to, again, kind of highlight how your beliefs and your philosophy shapes what you do in the classroom. So again, that's why you want the concrete examples. This is the statement that captivates and captures you as a teacher. So make it memorable and unique, because this is often something you will submit as part of a job application, even if it perhaps is quite abbreviated. It is something you're submitting as part of this assessment task. And even though you're not applying for a job, make it actually reflect who you are. Own your philosophy. So the use of declarative statements such as kind of blanket things, or like students don't learn through lecture or whatever, is not a particularly good idea. It's much better that you explain what your belief is, what you think, rather than going for really categorical statements, because that's not showing a lot of nuance, and it's not a good idea to be so categorical a lot of the time. You write about your experiences and your beliefs, so you scaffold that and justify it and explain it and relate it to, for example, curriculum documents and relevant theory. I'm going to show you some examples shortly. These are from the University of Queensland, and they're actually theoretical philosophies that academics have put forward. So they're for a different audience than it would be in a school context. But as you look through them, have a think about what you like and or dislike about the statements that you'll see. I've already told you basically who they were written for, but I've actually taken away the particular faculty that they were generated from. However, if you go on that hyperlink to the PDF file, you would see it. Consider if it's written in a personal way, if you get an idea of the person who wrote that, and if they're clarifying how they actually go about teaching, if we can find a balance between theory and practice and examples. Now, these examples have not been picked because they're excellent, and they haven't been picked by me. They've been picked by the person who generated this document in the first place. I've just copied and pasted it. But it does show some different possibilities. So have a think about that, and think about what could possibly be used in respect to your own philosophy. So this is one example. I see teaching as involving a reciprocal relationship between teachers and students. I believe that teachers have duties to their students and that students have duties to their teachers. I believe that it is my responsibility as a teacher to provide students with the following, as in so you can read those dot points. I also believe that my students have duties to me, which kind of backs up what they said. And I believe that these duties support me in fulfilling my duties to students. And then again, it gives you a number of dot points. So have a read of that. You can pause it and read it in your own time. So have a think about that. This is another statement, and it actually goes over 2 slides. I'm a teacher educator because I want to change the world. It's a pretty aspirational, broad picture thing. While I realise what I hope to accomplish is limited, I know that education is where I can have the greatest impact. I want my students to understand that the professional world they will inhabit, the school, is not immutable. As future teachers, they can make a difference, and their classrooms can be healthy, supportive environments in which their own students can grow and learn. So this is someone who's basically in the same role as I am, someone who's teaching students, who's seeing that this is her or his vision for teaching, this is what they want to accomplish. When you're doing your teaching philosophy, you're not working in a university and you're not training future teachers, so you will talk about what you see, whether you're training to be a primary or a secondary teacher, what you're seeing as the big picture, the goal for primary education or secondary education. Okay, then they're moving into some theory. So I wholeheartedly endorse what the Russian educational psychologist Ellis Vygotsky said about learning. It's about it is a socially constructed something anyway. And then they unpack that and continue on. They provide a metaphor as well about the classic Wizard of Oz as an allegory of what I want my students to learn, and then talking. Okay. Finally, I'm going to give you a brief example. This is actually, well, the person wasn't called Jack Russell, surprise, surprise, but this is actually taken straight from an application for a permanent job that a real living person submitted. And in that professional profile, even in that CV, there's actually a little snippet of Jack Russell's teaching philosophy. So you can see how it might manifest as a short glimpse even in something like a CV that is applied for a job. I'm going to stop there and I'm going to let you dwell on this. This is just really there to flag and to help you develop your second assessment task. So I'm not going to get you to, you're more than welcome to share your drafts and your thoughts on the forum. I'll put a forum up, but it's not an obligatory task. It is, however, something you will be doing as part of your second assessment. So you might want to have a look at this assessment criteria and see how it all fits in. So this is just preparing you for it and giving you plenty of time to think about what you will actually put forward in your teaching philosophy and how that underpins what you do. That's it. Thank you very much.